The autumn chill followed Rosa through the heavy oak doors of the Westbrook Country Club. She pulled her worn jacket tighter as she stepped into the warmth, the smell of money hitting her before anything else. It wasn't a scent you could name, maybe polished wood mixed with expensive perfume and privilege. Whatever it was, it made her feel like an intruder. Rosa wasn't supposed to be here. She was only filling in because her daughter Lily had caught the flu that morning. At 19, Lily had been working as a waitress at the club for 6 months now, saving up for college classes. When she called Rosa with a voice scratchy from coughing, begging her to take her shift because she couldn't afford to lose the job, Rosa couldn't say no. "You must be Lily's mother," said a tall woman with hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. Her name tag read Beverly Event Manager, and her eyes moved from Rosa's face down to her sensible shoes, taking in the whole picture with one sweep. "I'm making an exception today, but don't make a habit of this. We have standards." Rosa nodded, swallowing the words she wanted to say. She needed this favor for Lily's sake. "The uniform's in the back. Hurry up, the guests are arriving in 20 minutes. The locker room was empty as Rosa changed into the black pants and white button-up shirt. The pants were an inch too long and the shirt pulled slightly across her chest, but it would have to do. She twisted her long dark hair into a bun, using the bobby pins she found in the pocket of her jacket. Her reflection in the mirror looked tired. At 42, the lines around her eyes told stories of long nights working 2 jobs, of worrying about bills, of putting dreams aside. Rosa had once been someone else. Someone who played piano for hours each day, who had been accepted to a prestigious music school with a partial scholarship. But life had other plans when her parents fell ill during her senior year of high school. Then came a rushed marriage to Lily's father, who left when their daughter was 3. Music became something Rosa only touched in stolen moments, on a second-hand keyboard with missing keys. A bell rang somewhere in the building, pulling her back to the present. The grand ballroom was already filling with guests when Rosa slipped in through the service door. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting warm light over tables covered in white linen and elaborate flower arrangements. "Tray of champagne." "Stationed by the east entrance," ordered Beverly, thrusting a heavy silver tray into Rosa's hands. "Smile, for goodness sake. These people paid $500 a plate for this charity gala." Rosa positioned herself as instructed, balancing the tray with practiced ease. She'd waited tables at the diner for years before taking on house cleaning jobs, which paid better. The trick was to become invisible while remaining available, a skill she'd perfected. The guests arrived in waves. Women in glittering dresses and men in dark suits, all air-kissing and laughing too loudly at each other's jokes. They took champagne from her tray without looking at her face, their conversations flowing around her like water around a rock. "Did you hear about the pianist?" a woman in red asked her companion. "What a disaster," the man replied, shaking his head. "Richard said they got the call just 2 hours ago. Some kind of family emergency. Well, they'd better find a replacement. The Prescott Foundation won't be impressed by recorded music." Rosa's ears perked up at the mention of a pianist. Near the center of the ballroom stood a beautiful grand piano, its black surface gleaming under the lights. No one was seated at it, though the lid was raised in preparation. As the room filled, Rosa moved between guests with her tray, catching snippets of conversations. The upcoming election, someone's divorce, a scandal involving the mayor's son, a trip to Italy, and repeatedly, worried mentions of the missing pianist. During a quick trip to the kitchen for more champagne, she overheard Beverly arguing with an older man in an expensive suit. "Well, where are we supposed to find a classical pianist on a Saturday night with no notice?" Beverly hissed. "The speeches start in 45 minutes and then dinner. We needed that music for the cocktail hour and after the speeches. Figure it out," the man said, his voice sharp with authority. "The Prescott Foundation is considering a $2 million donation, and Harriet Prescott specifically mentioned looking forward to the live music. She's a patron of the symphony, for God's sake. I've called 3 agencies. Nobody's available on such short notice who meets our standards." Rosa hesitated in the doorway, the weight of the fresh tray in her hands momentarily forgotten. Before she could think better of it, she spoke up. "I play piano." Both heads turned toward her with identical expressions of surprise. "Not now," Beverly snapped. But the man, who Rosa now recognized as Thomas Wells, the club's director, held up his hand. "You play piano?" "Classical." Rosa nodded, her heart suddenly racing. I studied for many years. I was going to attend the Conservatory of Music before. She trailed off, seeing the skepticism in their faces. She's the backup waitress. Her daughter is out sick, Beverly explained, dismissing Rosa with a wave. Wells frowned, checking his gold watch.
What can you play without sheet music?
Bach, Chopin, Liszt, Debussy, Gershwin. Rosa spoke their names like old friends. I have a good memory for music. Wells and Beverly exchanged glances. It's not like we have options, Wells muttered. Beverly sighed dramatically. Fine, play something now, but if you embarrass us, I won't, Rosa said with more confidence than she felt. The three of them walked to the grand piano. A few nearby guests turned to watch curiously. Rosa set down her tray on a nearby service table and approached the instrument with reverence. It had been years since she'd touched anything so fine. She sat on the bench, adjusting its height, aware of the eyes on her. Someone nearby laughed softly. Rosa heard a woman whisper, "Is the help providing entertainment now?" Followed by muffled laughter. Her hands hovered over the keys, suddenly hesitant. What if she failed? What if 15 years of cleaning houses and waiting tables had erased what once came so naturally? She glanced up to see Wells watching with thinly veiled doubt, while Beverly looked like she was already planning how to handle the embarrassment. Behind them, a small crowd had gathered, their expressions ranging from curious to amused to openly disdainful. A tall woman in a midnight blue gown leaned toward her companion. "This should be entertaining," she said, not bothering to lower her voice. "Next, they'll have the valet parking attendant doing magic tricks." Heat rose to Rosa's cheeks. She closed her eyes, shutting out the room, the judgment, the years of putting her talent aside. She thought of her old piano teacher, Mrs. Chen, who once told her that music lived in the body, not just the mind. "Your fingers will remember," she had said. Rosa took a deep breath and began to play. She started with a Chopin nocturne, soft, dreamlike, the notes flowing like water over stones. Her fingers were stiff at first, finding their way back to familiar patterns. But within moments, muscle memory took over. The music grew in confidence, filling the high-ceilinged room. Rosa didn't dare open her eyes. She transitioned from Chopin to a Debussy piece, letting the impressionistic chords wash over the room. She could feel the shift in the air, the gradual quieting of voices, but she kept her focus on the music, on the pressure of the keys beneath her fingers, on the soul of the composition. The whispering stopped. The laughter died away. Even the clink of glasses fell silent. Rosa played on, losing herself in the music, rediscovering a part of herself that had been buried but never truly gone. Time seemed to stand still as her hands moved across the keys, drawing out melodies that spoke of both sorrow and joy, of dreams deferred but not abandoned. When she finally finished the piece and opened her eyes, Rosa was startled by what she saw. The crowd had grown 3 times larger. People had moved closer to the piano, some with glasses frozen halfway to their lips, others with expressions of genuine surprise. In the sudden silence that followed the last notes, no one spoke. No one scoffed. For the first time that evening, they were truly seeing her. And Rosa, her heart pounding with a long-forgotten thrill, realized that the night was just beginning. The applause caught Rosa off guard. It started with a single pair of hands, then spread like wildfire through the ballroom. She blinked, coming back to herself, suddenly aware of how many people had gathered around the piano. Thomas Wells approached with a smile that hadn't been there before. "Well," he said, clearing his throat, "that was unexpected." Beverly stood beside him, her tight expression now softened with surprise. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Rosa's hands rested in her lap, still tingling from the keys. "My grandmother taught me when I was little. Then I had lessons through high school." An older woman pushed through the small crowd. Her silver hair was arranged in an elegant updo, and diamonds glittered at her throat. Rosa recognized her immediately from the photos in the club newsletter Lily sometimes brought home. Harriet Prescott, the guest of honor. "Young woman," Mrs. Prescott said, her voice carrying the weight of someone used to being listened to. That was Debussy's Clair de Lune, followed by Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. Played beautifully, I might add. Rosa nodded. "Thank you, ma'am. And what else do you play?" Mrs. Prescott asked, her eyes sharp with interest. Before Rosa could answer, Wells stepped between them. Mrs. Prescott, I'm delighted you're enjoying our entertainment this evening. Rosa will be playing throughout the cocktail hour, as planned. As planned. Rosa almost laughed at that. Instead, she looked to Beverly, who gave a small nod. The speeches will begin in 30 minutes, Beverly said quietly. Play until then. Take a break during dinner, then resume afterward. Just like that, Rosa had been promoted from backup waitress to featured performer. She turned back to the keys, this time choosing a livelier piece, a Schubert impromptu that danced through the air. The crowd gradually dispersed, returning to their conversations, though now the music was no longer background but something they were actively listening to. Rosa played on, moving through her mental catalog of memorized pieces. Every so often she would glance up to see new faces watching her, some nodding in appreciation, others closing their eyes to better absorb the music. No one was laughing now. During a brief pause between pieces, a waiter appeared with a glass of water, placing it discreetly on top of the piano. Thanks, Rosa said, taking a sip. The kitchen staff can hear you playing from the back, the young man said with a grin. Chef Antonio stopped yelling at everyone for a whole 5 minutes to listen. That's some kind of record. Rosa smiled, feeling a warm glow spread through her chest. She hadn't performed for an audience in over 20 years, not since her last recital before graduation. Back then, her future had seemed so clear. Music school, then perhaps teaching or performing with a small company. Life had other ideas. She began a Mozart sonata, her confidence growing with each piece. The piano was responding to her touch as if they were old friends reunited. Its tone was rich and warm, the action of the keys smooth under her fingers. This was a well-loved instrument, regularly maintained and tuned. So different from the second-hand upright she'd had as a teenager, or the electronic keyboard with missing keys that now sat in the corner of their small apartment. As she played, Rosa found herself thinking of Lily. Her daughter had inherited her love of music but not her classical training. Lily played guitar, wrote her own songs, and sang with a voice that made Rosa's heart ache with its beauty. How proud she would be to see her mother right now. The thought made Rosa's fingers falter for just a moment. She recovered quickly, but the brief mistake reminded her of where she was and who she was supposed to be. The waitress, the help, now unexpectedly thrust into the spotlight. Excuse me. Rosa looked up to see a man in his 60s standing by the piano. His bow tie was slightly crooked, and he held a half-empty whiskey glass. My wife and I were wondering if you know any Gershwin. Rhapsody in Blue, perhaps? It's our anniversary. Happy anniversary, Rosa said with a genuine smile. I do know Gershwin. She transitioned into the famous opening clarinet glissando of Rhapsody in Blue, adapted for piano, then moved into the piece's soulful melody. The man's face lit up, and he gestured to a woman across the room who hurried over to join him. That's our song, the woman explained, her eyes misty with memory. We danced to it at our wedding. Rosa nodded, continuing to play as the couple swayed gently beside the piano. Soon another pair joined them, then another. Without planning to, Rosa had created an impromptu dance floor. She caught Beverly watching from across the room, her expression unreadable. But she made no move to stop what was happening, so Rosa continued, adding other Gershwin pieces she knew by heart. By the time Wells tapped a microphone at the front of the room, signaling the start of the speeches, Rosa had been playing for nearly 40 minutes straight. Her fingers were tired but exhilarated. She finished with a flourish and the room broke into applause once more. Thank you, everyone, Wells said into the microphone. If you'll all take your seats, we'll begin our program. But first, let's show our appreciation for the wonderful music provided by Rosa. The applause grew louder. Rosa stood, giving a small, awkward bow before making her way toward the kitchen. She needed to collect herself, to process what had just happened. In the bustling kitchen, she found a quiet corner near the walk-in refrigerator. Her hands were shaking slightly, from excitement, from nerves, from playing for so long after such a long break. She flexed her fingers, feeling the pleasant ache. There she is. Chef Antonio, a large man with a bushy mustache, spotted her and waved a wooden spoon in her direction. The pianist. My cousin Nico plays with the symphony, and even he would be impressed. The kitchen staff paused in their work to smile or nod at her. Rosa felt her cheeks grow warm with the attention. I'm just filling in, she explained. Filling in? Purr. Antonio dismissed this with a wave of his spoon. You play like someone born to it, born to it. The words echoed in Rosa's mind as she made her way back to the ballroom. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was who she had always been, beneath the layers of practicality and compromise that life had wrapped around her. The speeches were still going on when she slipped back in. She stood at the back of the room listening as Mrs. Prescott talked about the Foundation's work, supporting arts education in underserved schools. The irony wasn't lost on Rosa. Here she was, someone who had given up an arts education because of financial necessity, playing at a gala raising money for others like her younger self. A movement near the bar caught Rosa's eye. A man was watching her, his expression thoughtful. Unlike the other guests in their formal wear, he was dressed more casually in dark jeans and a sports jacket. When he noticed her looking back, he raised his glass in a small salute. After dinner, as promised, Rosa returned to the piano. The atmosphere had changed. Loosened by food and wine, the crowd was more relaxed, their conversations louder. But as soon as she began to play, a hush fell once more. This time, she chose music that reflected her own journey. Pieces that spoke of longing, of struggle, but also of beauty, found in unexpected places. Her fingers moved with growing confidence, telling her story without words. She was so absorbed in the music that she didn't notice the casually dressed man approach until he was standing right beside the piano. "Do you take requests?" he asked during a brief pause. Rosa nodded. "If I know it. How about something original? Something of your own?" Rosa's breath caught. I haven't composed anything in years." The man tilted his head, studying her. "But you used to?" "A lifetime ago," Rosa admitted. He smiled, and something in his expression made Rosa feel seen in a way she hadn't in a very long time. "I'm Pete," he said, extending his hand. "I produce music for a living, and I think we should talk after you're done here." Rosa looked at his outstretched hand, then back at the keys beneath her fingers. In the space of a single evening, her world had shifted, all because she'd dared to reach for the piano when everyone expected her to fail. She took a deep breath and began to play again. But this time, the notes were her own. The last guests lingered well past midnight, reluctant to leave the magic that had filled the ballroom. Rosa's fingers were sore in the best possible way as she played one final piece, a gentle, hopeful melody that she'd created on the spot. It wasn't polished or perfect, but it was honest. And from the expressions around her, that honesty had touched something in her listeners. As the final notes faded, she looked up to see Pete still waiting nearby, nursing what looked like club soda. He'd been there for most of the night, sometimes watching intently, sometimes closing his eyes to listen, occasionally making notes on his phone. "That was beautiful," he said as she finally stood from the bench. "Is that really something you just made up tonight?" Rosa nodded, suddenly shy again now that the music had stopped. "It's been in my head for a while, I guess. Little pieces of it. But tonight was the first time I put it all together." Beverly appeared at her side, looking both tired and strangely respectful. "Mrs. Prescott has asked for your contact information," she said, handing Rosa a business card. "She wants to discuss something with you." Rosa took the card, her eyebrows raised in surprise. "Thank you. And Mr. Wells would like to speak with you before you leave. He's in his office." Beverly glanced at Pete with mild suspicion. "Are you a member, sir?" Pete smiled easily. "Guest of the Andersons. But I was just leaving." He turned back to Rosa and handed her his own card. "Call me tomorrow, or whenever you're ready. We should talk about your music." After he left, Rosa stared at the card in her hand. Blue Note Productions, Pete Winters, music producer. Her heart skipped a beat. Blue Note was a small but respected label that specialized in jazz and classical crossover artists. She'd seen their logo on albums by musicians she admired. "Rosa?" Beverly's voice broke through her thoughts. "Mr. Wells is waiting." The club director's office was all dark wood and leather with photographs of famous members lining the walls. Thomas Wells sat behind an imposing desk, looking considerably more relaxed than earlier in the evening. "Sit down, please," he said, gesturing to a chair. "I'll get right to the point. We have a regular pianist who plays here 3 nights a week, Thursday through Saturday. He's taking a leave of absence for 6 months for some medical treatments." He leaned forward. "I'd like to offer you the position until he returns." Rosa blinked, certain she had misheard. "You want me to play here?" "Regularly." Mrs. Prescott was very impressed. So were many of our members. He named a figure that made Rosa's eyes widen. It was twice what she made cleaning houses for fewer hours. Plus tips, he added. Our members can be generous when they enjoy the entertainment. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Wells replied with a smile that transformed his stern face. You brought something special to the club tonight. I'd be a poor businessman not to recognize that. Walking to her car 20 minutes later, Rosa felt like she was floating. In her purse were 2 business cards that represented possibilities she hadn't dared imagine that morning. And she had just accepted a job playing piano at one of the most exclusive clubs in the city. The drive home was a blur. Their apartment was dark when she arrived. Lily would be sleeping, fighting off her flu. Rosa moved quietly, making herself a cup of tea before sitting at their small kitchen table. What would she tell her daughter tomorrow? How could she explain that everything might be about to change? All because she'd taken a risk and reached for something she thought was lost. Rosa pulled out her phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. Hello? Her mother's voice was thick with sleep. Mama, it's me. I'm sorry it's so late. Rosa? What's wrong? Is Lily okay? Everyone's fine. Rosa took a deep breath. I played tonight, Mama, at the country club. I played piano for all these rich people and they liked it. And now I have a job there and a music producer wants to talk to me and I don't know what to do. There was a long pause. Her mother had always been her biggest supporter and her voice of reason. You play for yourself first, her mother finally said. Everything else follows. Your abuela always said your hands were made for the piano. Maybe it's time you believed her again. After they hung up, Rosa crept into Lily's bedroom. Her daughter was sprawled across the bed, one arm flung over her head, breathing the heavy sleep of the unwell. On the nightstand sat a bottle of cough medicine and a notebook open to lyrics Lily had been working on. Rosa gently closed the notebook, her heart full. Maybe now she could help Lily avoid the detours that had taken her away from her own dreams. Maybe they could both find their way back to music. She fell asleep that night with melodies swimming through her head, old favorites and new compositions taking shape. Morning came with the insistent buzz of her phone. Rosa fumbled for it, still half asleep. Hello? Rosa, it's Pete Winters. I hope I'm not calling too early. She sat up, suddenly wide awake. No, it's fine. I couldn't stop thinking about your playing last night, especially that original piece at the end. His voice was energetic, excited. I'm working on a project, a compilation album featuring undiscovered pianists. I'd love to include your work. Rosa's free hand clutched at her blanket. I don't have any recordings. I haven't played seriously in years. But you played seriously last night, Pete countered. Look, I've been in this business a long time. What you have can't be taught, that emotional connection, that authenticity, the technical stuff we can work on if needed. But you've got the heart. That's what matters. I have a daughter, Rosa said, not sure why that was the first thing that came to mind. Pete laughed. I've got 3 kids myself. They're why I do this, to bring more beauty into the world. Will you at least come to my studio this week? We can record a few pieces, see how it feels. By the time she hung up, Lily was awake and standing in her doorway, wrapped in a blanket. Who was that? She asked, her voice still raspy from her cold. Rosa patted the bed beside her, and Lily shuffled over, collapsing against her mother's shoulder. That, Rosa said, stroking her daughter's hair, was the most unexpected phone call of my life. She told Lily everything, about playing at the club, about the job offer, about Pete and Blue Note Productions. As she spoke, Lily's eyes grew wider, her sleepiness forgotten. Mom, that's amazing. Blue Note, they're legit. My music theory teacher is always talking about their artists. Lily bounced on the bed, then winced as the movement triggered a coughing fit. When she recovered, she asked, Are you going to do it? The recording thing? Rosa looked around their modest bedroom. The dresser with the wobbly drawer, the small closet stuffed with practical clothes, the old keyboard in the corner collecting dust. For so long, her life had been about survival, about making sure Lily had opportunities she herself had lost. I think I am, she said slowly, but there's something else I need to do first. Later that day, after making Lily soup and checking her fever, Rosa drove across town to a small house with a neat front yard. She hadn't visited her old piano teacher in nearly 5 years, though they exchanged Christmas cards each year. Mrs. Chen looked smaller than Rosa remembered, but her eyes were just as sharp, her posture just as straight. Rosa, she said, opening the door wider. What a lovely surprise. Inside, the house was exactly as Rosa remembered, filled with books and plants, and dominated by a beautiful upright piano. I need your help, Rosa said after they had settled with tea. I've been offered a chance I never expected, but I'm rusty. Out of practice. Mrs. Chen studied her former student over the rim of her teacup. Your fingers remember more than you think. But yes, we can work together again. A small smile appeared. I always told you that you would return to music someday. You did, Rosa admitted. I should have listened sooner. No. Mrs. Chen set down her cup firmly. The path you walked made you who you are. The music you play now has lived through struggle and joy and heartbreak. That is not something that can be taught. They spent the afternoon at the piano, with Mrs. Chen gently guiding Rosa through exercises to strengthen her fingers and refresh her technique. The older woman nodded approvingly as Rosa played one of the pieces from the night before. You see, Mrs. Chen said, your hands never forgot. They were just waiting for you to be ready. As Rosa drove home, her mind was already racing ahead, to her meeting with Pete at the studio later that week, to her first official night playing at the club, to all the music she wanted to create. She thought of the people who had scoffed when she first approached the piano, how quickly their laughter had turned to silence, then to appreciation, how one moment of courage had opened doors she thought were closed forever. Sometimes, Rosa realized, life gives you a second chance to become who you were always meant to be. You just have to be brave enough to take it. The Blue Note production studio wasn't what Rosa had expected. Instead of some sleek modern building downtown, Pete's workplace was a converted Victorian house in an older neighborhood. The porch creaked as she walked up the steps, clutching her folder of music, handwritten sheets from years ago that she'd dug out of storage, along with new compositions she'd been working on all week. Pete greeted her at the door with a warm smile. You found us! Most people drive past a couple times before they figure out this old house is actually a studio. Inside, the living room had been transformed with sound-dampening panels and equipment, but it still felt homey, with comfortable couches and plants in the windows. In the center of the room stood a glossy black grand piano. That's Isabel, Pete said, following Rosa's gaze. Named after my grandmother. She's been in more recordings than I can count. Rosa approached the piano carefully, almost reverently. May I? That's what you're here for. Her fingers touched the keys lightly at first, testing their weight and response. The action was perfect, not too stiff, not too loose. She played a few scales, then a snippet of Bach, letting herself get acquainted with the instrument. Take your time, Pete said, moving around the room, adjusting microphones. When you're ready, we'll do some test recordings. Play whatever feels right. Classical pieces you know well, your own compositions, anything. Today is just about capturing your sound. A younger man with tousled hair and glasses appeared from another room. Mics are all set up. We ready? Rosa, this is Danny, our sound engineer, and my nephew. Danny, meet Rosa. They shook hands and Danny gave her an encouraging nod. Uncle Pete hasn't stopped talking about your playing all week. No pressure or anything. Rosa laughed despite her nerves. None at all. Ignore him, Pete said. Just play like you did at the club, like no one's listening but you. Easier said than done, Rosa thought, settling on the bench. She placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and began with a piece she knew by heart, a Chopin nocturne that had always felt like coming home. The first few measures were stiff, her shoulders tight with anxiety. But gradually, as the music flowed, she forgot about the microphones and the watchful eyes. There was only the piano, the melody, and the emotions she poured into it. When the piece ended, she looked up to see Pete and Danny exchanging glances. That was just a warm-up, right? Danny asked. Rosa nodded, suddenly uncertain. Was it not good? It was beautiful, Pete assured her. But Danny's right, I can hear you holding back. Let's try something else. Something of yours, maybe? Rosa hesitated, then pulled out one of her own compositions. A piece she'd started years ago when Lily was small, about the bittersweet joy of watching someone you love grow and change. She'd finished it just last night, sitting at their old keyboard while Lily slept. This time when she played, there was no holding back. The music flowed from some deep place inside her, raw and honest. She forgot about technique and focused on feeling, on the story she wanted to tell through the notes. When she finished, the room was silent. She looked up to see Danny wiping his eyes behind his glasses. "Sorry," he said with an embarrassed laugh. "It's just that reminded me of my mom. She used to sit with me when I was sick, just like that." Pete was nodding slowly, his expression thoughtful. "That's it. That's what I heard at the club. That ability to make people feel something real." He sat on the couch across from the piano. "Rosa, I want to be straight with you. This compilation album I mentioned? It's important. We've got investors watching it closely. If it does well, Blue Note can expand, sign more artists, take more risks on people who deserve to be heard." "No pressure," Danny muttered with a grin. Pete ignored him. "I want your piece to be the heart of the album. And I want to discuss the possibility of a solo project afterward, depending on how things go." Rosa's hands froze above the keys. "A solo project? You mean an entire album? Of my music? You're playing your compositions, yes." Pete leaned forward. "But I need to know you're all in, that you're ready to put yourself out there, to be vulnerable through your music. What I just heard, that's what people are hungry for. Something authentic in a world full of processed, perfect emptiness." Rosa thought about her life over the past week, how she'd been practicing every spare moment, how melodies kept waking her in the middle of the night, demanding to be written down. She thought about her first night playing officially at the country club, and how different it had felt from that initial evening. No more scoffs, only appreciation from the moment she sat down. "I'm ready," she said, surprising herself with her certainty. They recorded for hours, breaking only for lunch, which Pete ordered from a nearby deli. Rosa played classical pieces, jazz standards she'd learned in high school, and 3 of her own compositions. By the time they finished, the afternoon sun was slanting through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. "You're a natural in the studio," Danny said as he helped her gather her music sheets. "Some people freeze up with the mics on, but you just went deeper into the music." Rosa smiled, feeling tired but exhilarated. "It felt good, like finding a piece of myself I'd forgotten was there." Pete walked her to her car, discussing next steps, mixing the recordings, scheduling another session, paperwork for the label. "Oh, and one more thing," he added as she was about to get in. "Harriet Prescott called me yesterday. Apparently, she's on the board of the Community Arts Center downtown. They're looking for a piano teacher for their youth program." Rosa's hand froze on the car door handle. "She mentioned me? By name? Said you had, and I quote, 'the right combination of talent and humanity. The position includes studio time for your own work.'" He handed her another business card. "This is the director's contact info. They're expecting your call." Driving home, Rosa could barely process everything that had happened. A week ago, she had been cleaning houses and worrying about bills. Now she had a regular gig at the club, a recording opportunity, and potentially a teaching position that would allow her to share her love of music with children who might otherwise never touch a piano. Life could change so quickly. Sometimes for the worse, she knew that all too well. But sometimes, if you were brave enough to reach for what you loved, it could change for the better just as fast. Lily was sitting on their small balcony when Rosa got home, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm evening. Her cold was finally improving and the fresh air seemed to be helping. "Well?" she demanded as Rosa joined her. "How was it? Did you record? Are you going to be famous?" Rosa laughed, settling into the other chair. "I recorded several pieces, yes. And no, I'm not going to be famous, but..." She told Lily about the compilation album, the possibility of a solo project, and the teaching opportunity at the Community Arts Center. Lily's eyes grew wider with each revelation. When Rosa finished, her daughter shook her head in amazement. "Mom, do you realize what's happening? This is your dream. The one you gave up." Rosa reached over and squeezed Lily's hand. "I didn't give it up. I just put it on hold for a while. For me," Lily said quietly. "You put it on hold for me. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat." Rosa meant it. "But now maybe we can both chase our dreams. You with your songs, me with my piano." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "I have a gig," Lily said suddenly. Rosa turned to her. "What? A gig?" "At the Copper Cup, that coffee shop near campus. Just a 20-minute set, but it's something." She looked both excited and terrified. "It's this Saturday. I was going to tell you. But then all this happened with you and the piano and it seemed small in comparison. It's not small at all, Rosa interrupted, feeling a surge of pride. It's the beginning, just like what happened to me at the club. She grinned. Maybe musical lightning does strike twice in the same family. Will you come? I know you have to play at the club now, but my set is early at 7. Try to keep me away, Rosa said. I'll be there in the front row embarrassing you by cheering too loudly. Lily laughed, then grew serious. Mom, I'm really proud of you. For not giving up. For reaching for that piano even when those rich people thought you couldn't play. Rosa felt tears prick her eyes. I'm proud of us both. That night after Lily had gone to bed, Rosa sat at their old keyboard with headphones on, not wanting to disturb the neighbors. Her fingers moved over the keys, finding a new melody, something hopeful and bright, with undertones of all they'd overcome. She'd call it second chances. 6 months passed in a blur of piano keys, recording sessions, and new beginnings. Autumn turned to winter, then slowly gave way to spring. Rosa's life had transformed so completely that sometimes she had to pause and remind herself that it was all real. Tonight was one of those moments. She stood backstage at the Community Arts Center, peeking through the curtain at the gathering audience. The spring recital was about to begin, her students' first public performance and her debut as their teacher. Nervous? Mrs. Chen asked, appearing beside her. Rosa smiled at her former teacher, now her colleague and friend. For them, not for me. They've worked so hard. As have you, Mrs. Chen said, patting Rosa's hand. Harriet Prescott was right about you. You have a gift for teaching. The past 5 months at the Arts Center had shown Rosa a side of herself she'd never fully explored, her ability to connect with children, to find unique ways to help each student overcome their particular challenges. Her weekend classes had quickly become popular, with a waiting list that surprised even the center's director. But tonight wasn't about her. It was about the 12 children who would take their turns at the piano, showing their families what they had learned. Children from neighborhoods like Rosa's own, who might never have touched a piano if not for the center's scholarship program. 10 minutes till curtain, the stage manager announced, popping his head into the waiting area where the young pianists sat with their parents, some fidgeting with sheet music, others practicing finger movements silently on their knees. Rosa moved among them, offering encouragement, straightening bow ties and smoothing dresses, reminding them of the breathing exercises they'd practiced to calm their nerves. Remember, she told them, music isn't about being perfect. It's about sharing something from your heart. If you make a mistake, keep going. The audience is here because they love you, not because they expect perfection. As she spoke, she caught sight of Lily slipping into the auditorium. Her daughter waved, then pointed to the 2 people following her, Rosa's parents who had driven 3 hours to be here tonight. Her heart swelled. The recital began with the youngest students playing simple pieces with careful concentration. Some hesitated. Some played through mistakes with determined faces, but each finished to enthusiastic applause. Rosa stood in the wings, her chest tight with pride, silently mouthing the notes along with them. During the brief intermission, she checked her phone and found a message from Pete. Just got the final masters. Album sounds incredible. Your solo is stealing the show. Call me tomorrow. Rosa smiled, tucking the phone away. The compilation album was set to release next month, featuring her piece Second Chances as the centerpiece. Pete had already scheduled studio time for her solo project, to begin recording in the summer, but that was tomorrow's joy. Tonight belonged to her students. The second half of the recital featured the older children, including a shy 12-year-old named Zoe who reminded Rosa painfully of herself at that age. Talented but doubtful, with hands that seemed born for the piano but a mind that questioned every note. When Zoe's turn came, the girl froze momentarily in the spotlight, staring at the keys. Rosa held her breath, then saw Zoe's shoulders rise and fall in the deep breath they'd practiced. The girl began to play Debussy's Clair de Lune, simplified for her level but still challenging. Rosa watched, her heart in her throat, as Zoe moved through the piece. About halfway through, the girl faltered, hitting a wrong note, then another. For a terrible moment, it seemed she might stop entirely. Then Zoe glanced to the wings, found Rosa's eyes, and seemed to draw strength from her teacher's encouraging nod. She continued, finding her way back to the melody, her small face set with determination. When she finished, the audience burst into applause, none louder than Rosa. As the recital ended and families gathered in the reception area for cookies and punch, Rosa found herself surrounded by parents thanking her, children hugging her waist, and her own family watching it all with proud smiles. "You've found your place," and her father said, hugging her tightly. "More than one place," Rosa replied, thinking of her various musical homes now. The country club where she still played 3 nights a week, the recording studio where she was creating her album, and here, where she was passing on her love of music to the next generation. Later that night, after her parents had gone to their hotel and Lily had left for a late shift at her new job waiting tables at a music venue downtown, Rosa sat alone at her piano. Not the old keyboard, but a real upright piano that she'd purchased with her first paycheck from Blue Note. The apartment was different too, larger, brighter, in a building with neighbors who appreciated music at reasonable hours. Pictures lined the walls, Rosa with her students, Lily at her first real gig, the two of them with Mrs. Chen at a benefit concert. Rosa played softly, improvising, letting her thoughts wander through the past 6 months. So much had changed since that night when she dared to reach for the keys at the country club. One moment of courage had led to another, then another, creating a path she could never have imagined. Her phone rang, interrupting her reverie. The caller ID showed Beverly from the club. "Rosa, I'm so sorry to bother you this late," Beverly said without preamble, "but we have a situation. Richard, our regular pianist, was supposed to return from his leave next week, but he just called. His doctor won't clear him to come back yet." "Is he okay?" Rosa asked, genuinely concerned about the man she'd never met but whose position she'd been filling. "He'll be fine eventually, but he needs another 3 months of recovery." Beverly paused. "I know you're busy with your recording in the Arts Center, but is there any chance you could extend your time with us? The members keep asking when you'll be playing next. You've become quite a draw." Rosa smiled at the irony. The same people who had once scoffed at the idea of her touching their piano now came specifically to hear her play. "I can stay on through the summer," she said after considering her schedule. "My recording sessions will be during the day, and I'm only teaching at the center on weekends." "Wonderful. And there's one more thing." Beverly sounded uncharacteristically hesitant. "The club is hosting a fundraiser for music education in schools next month. We'd like you to be the featured performer. Your story, it's exactly what the event is about. Bringing music to people who might not otherwise have the chance." After the call ended, Rosa sat in the quiet of her apartment, fingers resting lightly on the piano keys. Featured performer. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible to the people at that club. Now they wanted to showcase her talent, her story. She began to play again. This time a new piece that had been forming in her mind, something about transformation, about becoming visible, about finding your voice after years of silence. The doorbell rang, interrupting her flow. She wasn't expecting anyone at this hour. When she opened the door, Lily stood there, eyes shining with excitement. "Mom, you'll never believe what happened." She thrust a flyer into Rosa's hands. "The owner of the soundbox heard me play tonight and wants me to open for an actual touring band next weekend. A real opening act with my name on the poster and everything." Rosa pulled her daughter into a fierce hug, the flyer crumpling slightly between them. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. Later, after celebrating with ice cream and making plans to shop for a new outfit for Lily's big night, they sat together at the piano. Lily picked out a melody with one hand, something from a song she was writing, while Rosa provided chords to support it. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't played that night?" Lily asked suddenly. "If you'd just kept serving drinks and gone home?" Rosa considered the question. "I'd still be cleaning houses. You'd still be waiting tables with no time for your music. We'd be getting by, but not much more than that. What made you do it? Walk up to that piano when everyone thought you couldn't play?" Rosa's fingers moved gently over the keys, finding the heart of her daughter's melody and adding depth to it. "I was tired," she said finally. "Tired of being invisible. Tired of having this music inside me with nowhere for it to go." She smiled at Lily. "And maybe I wanted to show you that it's never too late to be who you might have been." They played together until midnight, mother and daughter, creating something new from their combined talents. Outside their window, the city hummed its own melody, full of other people with hidden gifts, waiting for their moment to be heard. Rosa thought about all the pianos and all the rooms she had cleaned over the years. How she had sometimes let her fingers brush the keys when no one was watching. How it had taken one moment of courage to change everything. Sometimes the most important note was the first one. The one you played when everyone expected silence. The rest, as her life was showing her now, was simply the music finding its way home.